this point. Okay, that being the case, we'll move to hearing persons present. If you wish to address us, please come to the microphone, provide your name and address, and make your comments. Good evening, Jamie.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Button. My address is 10 Glenbrook Drive in Mendham. While I represent Mendham Township on the West Morris Regional High School District Board of Education, as I have been honored to do for the past 5 years, my comments this evening reflect my views alone, not made on behalf of the board. This evening, I would like to update you on the situation in Egypt. Since I last described it to you here on July 8th, 5 days after a military coup in Egypt, the situation has gotten tragically worse. More than 1,000 civilians have been killed by Egyptian security forces, military, police, and unofficial militias. Some have been burned to death in their tents at sit-ins. Many have been shot in the head. We are fortunate here in Mendham Township, where no one has been burned or shot in the head. Our officials have only shot ourselves in the foot. In a July 12th letter to the Mendham Borough Mayor Neil Henry, you submitted extensive comments on a request for proposal to study the feasibility of restructuring the West Morris Regional High School District. If incorporated in the final RFP, your comments will substantially increase the scope, expense, and time required to complete the feasibility study without providing additional useful information to district residents. Your comments expanded the text of the RFP by more than 50%. In addition, some of your comments will promote dissension between the municipalities, decreasing our chances for reaching the consensus necessary to proceed to a referendum. Similar comments led to the failure of the Mayor's Educational Advisory Committee last year. In addition, many of your comments could bias the outcome of the study. Most troubling, however, are the RFP changes you have proposed that run directly against the interests of our taxpayers. To my utter astonishment, you have proposed that the study consider 4 property value-based tax schemes that would defeat a primary purpose of this exercise. That purpose is to end the property value-based tax system, which forces half of the district to pay twice the cost per student. We want to return to the original tax system agreed to by all municipalities upon the creation of the West Morris Regional High School District in 1958, one of equal tax per student for each town. You are opening Pandora's box of property value-based funding iterations serves only to create division between the Mendhams and Chesters when we seek to unite these communities in correcting the current system of taxation that benefits Washington Township greatly at the expense of the others. Your proposed scenario for study of a funding formula identical to the current one we are so heavily burdened with would cost Mendham Township taxpayers an additional $1 million annually in a new district. Why in the world would the Mendham Township Committee even suggest it? These property value-based scenarios would not only decrease the likelihood of agreement on a referendum, but also, if passed, would leave the door open to future dissension as demographics shift. Permanently fixing our current unacceptable situation requires tax apportionment based only on the number of students sent by each town. Last year, this effort for a feasibility study faced several obstacles erected by the Mayor's Committee. One was their insistence on including the dead-end alternative of a mega K-12 district of all 5 towns. Earlier this year, however, as you pointed out, Mayor Merck, the Mendham Borough Council, to its credit, reversed its position by dropping this requirement. Perhaps the council's responsiveness to its constituents contributed to Mendham Boroughs being ranked by New Jersey Monthly as the best town in the state in which to live. Another obstruction erected by the Mayor's Committee last year was its requirement for unanimous consent by all 5 towns. effectively giving every town a veto in the process. This year, however, Chester Township's Mayor Cogger dropped his previous insistence on including all 5 towns in any study. Isn't it wonderful how quickly a little competition for re-election will suddenly bring a recalcitrant politician in line with his constituents? After navigating around the obstacles created last year, we never imagined more obstructions would be erected this year by the Mendham Township Committee. Elected representatives of the town with the most to gain, $3.3 million per year, along with improved education for our children. The little progress you have made has been at near a little pace. A major cause of the problem is you're handing the steering wheel of this project over to one who has publicly announced in this very room that we have zero chance of success in fixing our high school district problem, and who has since worked diligently to make his a self-fulfilled prophecy. Any project steering committee must not include such individuals determined to steer this project into a wall. It must not be a reincarnation of last year's mayor's committee that was also steered by a chair who fabricated obstacles before running the project into the ground. Instead, Citizens for Better Schools, as the driving force behind the feasibility study for the past 3 years, must be represented on any project steering committee in order to ensure the project moves forward constructively and urgently. I thank God I don't live in Egypt or Syria, where authoritarian governments impose their will using deadly means against their citizens. Here in Mendham Township, I hope all of our elected officials on the Mendham Township Committee and on our school boards can work together with urgency for the benefit of our taxpayers and improved education for our children. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Button. Other members who wish to address the public?
Brian Kavanagh, 610 Cherry Lane.
Evening, Brian.
Evening. So I share Mr. Button's concerns and perspectives on this. I think that it would be ideal to remove things from this RFP that are going to increase the cost of the RFP unnecessarily, delay the time it takes to complete the RFP unnecessarily, and create potential issues in the future that are exactly the issues we're trying to get out of with this process in the present. So I'll focus principally on one issue that he brought up, and that is the funding formula. The proposal that came to this committee had only one funding formula to be studied, and that funding formula was per pupil based. As Mr. Button pointed out, that is the way the district was created at the outset. It was for strange reasons that no one really believes were appropriate. In retrospect, it was changed to a property value formula 20 some odd years, actually almost 30 years ago. And while it may not be the only issue that has created issues within our regional high school district, that funding formula is the biggest issue that faces, that impedes the success of our regional high school district. And the reason it does that is because it disassociates the benefit of education from the cost of education, municipality by municipality. So it makes it very difficult to pass budgets when certain people are being asked to pay a lot more, but they're not going to derive the benefits of paying a lot more, or they're going to derive a partial benefit of the amount they pay. So from a philosophical perspective, it's a fatal flaw, in my opinion, to look to fund a district using a property value-based formula. And that's been proven, in my mind, over the past 20 some odd years in our own regional high school district case. So from a big picture perspective, I think it's a big mistake to open up this can of worms. I am also quite surprised from a little picture perspective that it would have been this committee that was the one that proactively proposed this, because it is, as Mr. Button pointed out, something that could cost our municipality an extra $1 million a year relative to what would be the case if it were per pupil funding. So, to my knowledge, no other municipality proposed this, and I don't understand why we proactively propose something that's, so against our own economic interests. I would like to have that removed and restored to just evaluating per pupil. It's the right thing to do, and it's the right thing for our township to be done. So, I'd like to ask a question. Is this committee supportive of funding an RFP if it were to revert to having only one funding formula being studied?
Brian, this is your opportunity to share your opinion with us. It's not question and answer, and I'm not going to permit it.
Okay. So, that is the principal issue that I would like to have rectified in this RFP, because I think it's going to create opportunities for dissension between the communities, and in fact, you may have just proposed something that you can't get Mendham Township to actually get behind politically. So I think it needs to, even if it risks credibility of this committee, I think the right thing to do for those you represent is to rectify the mistake that you've made and pull that language back. So in addition to that, I also believe, based upon the history of this over the past year and a half, that it is critically important to have a citizen representative. I would suggest that that person be appointed by Citizens for Better Schools, who for several years has been advocating on behalf of the citizens on this issue, to join the steering committee. Because if we don't do that, we're going to end up with, 4 governing bodies that last year had some issues being able to successfully drive the ball forward. Those are the principal issues that I think need to be addressed in what was sent over. I would strongly urge the committee to reconsider the position it currently has. I don't believe any material progress has been made in the 4 weeks since you all submitted those changes. There's a little bit of, maybe one municipality in Chester might have some positive things to have to say part of this. There's no credible progress that can be objectively identified that's been made, and I think that it would behoove our community, if we were to rectify the RFP to be something that our community can support prior to asking the Chesters to opine on. So, as you know, I am extremely eager to see progress speed up here, but I do want to see it be progress towards an achievable objective rather than progress towards a dead-end wall. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
Corbett, 18 Corey Lane.
Hi, Kevin.
As always, we're in the dog days of summer. All our neighbors are out having a good time. We're doing the public service here, so we appreciate everyone who is up here and for being here tonight. Also comments on the status of the RFP. I've missed the last few meetings. The Mendham Boy Scout troops has been quite a summer. We had a high adventure trip to the Pyrenees, and then the Adirondacks, and then also they had the National Jamboree in West Virginia. So as a Scoutmaster for a high adventure, I've been missing all the excitement. But catching up and being back, before we get into the sort of election season in September, everyone's back. The status RFP, my comments and observations, not of being involved on the day-to-day as much, but certainly as a member of CBS, regarding the RFPs, as from someone who myself, in various times of my life, have either issued hundreds of RFPs or now in my current role answering hundreds of RFPs. I think just talking with neighbors, obviously heard from Brian and Jamie, but is the feeling that the good thing is over the last few years we've really raised the attention to the issue, collectively. But for a lot of the neighbors who are now getting a sense of it but don't quite get it, they're saying, well, what's taking so long? What's taking so long? And I think there is frustration, and as in dealing with RFPs, I think those of us who've been on the inside have seen when you're either interagencies or within a committee, if somebody wants to drag something out or kill it, they will make the process so cumbersome. So I think there's suspicion, rightly or wrongly, if there's not progress, particularly with the frustration that's been building up with the issue, I guess more, that I can understand that frustration, and I'm hearing that from neighbors as well. So expediting the process, as I said in the last meeting, I was here, not leading from behind, and certainly with the township having the most to gain. I certainly agree with Mrs. Thomas's comments about trying to move forward with the RFP and working with the other towns. And I'm certainly glad to see that it is coming together. Two items of concern for me is one, sharing the comments about the apportioning on the basis of the property values. My understanding is the social issue goes back to where there were prosperous, wealthy towns versus low-income towns, and that was the genesis of trying to go back to change the law from just being on the per pupil basis. And I think, going back to the 58, whenever this district is formed, the demographics have not dramatically changed. It may have been more development, but it's not, the socioeconomic disparity is not like this at Newark versus Mendham and those kind of issues, which I think come up in some of the other studies that the consultants that we've had over the last few years have touched on, why it evolved the funding formulas in New Jersey and various communities the way it has. So I do not believe that applies to the four, and even including Washington Township. Ultimately, when it comes to a referendum, should the study dictate that, I do not think that the economic issue is there. So therefore, to me, doing it on the per pupil basis, for the reasons mentioned by Mr. Kavanagh, certainly touches that. The other issue is the steering committee, and also saying about moving things along. For those who followed the RGA last week, another Mendham elected official made the comment of he had the chance of being the first Republican governor since I think Tom came to be elected with more than 50% vote, and he attributed that to the fact that, one, he knows how to work with others even if they have different views, and secondly, that he was able to get stuff done. And I noticed today for another mayor who just recently passed away in New Jersey, different county, Jackson Agra, who I was working for with the Port Authority days, and he was also known as somebody who could work with others and get stuff done. So, as sort of the 11th commandment does speak bad of a fellow Republican, I would hope that in working with others, I think, I know I've heard from Jamie Button, people find his directness sometimes to be abrasive. But if I look at the last 5 years, what he has done in positioning this, and when a lot of people would knock him, and this is not being Jamie Button's fan club, just as a citizen watching him, he has moved the dial in a way that bureaucracy would have let issues drag out. And I think when you're going to have a steering committee, having somebody who has that determination to get results, I would think Jamie Button should be on that committee. In closing, I think that's certainly. Perfection can be the enemy of good. We need to be thorough in doing an RFP and work well with the others, but many things, as you get the RFP out, you're going to be working with a consultant, going through a process. So the RFP is not the end goal. You want to make sure it's appropriate RFP. But the end goal is to get a proper study that can lead to genuine reform and solve the issue that's antagonizing a lot of people in this community, and I think has not advantaged the school and certainly is not helping the property values. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public who wish to address the Township Committee at this point. Good evening.
Good evening. Steve Moore, 1 Ogden Road. Thank you for the opportunity to give me a chance to speak tonight. I have 3 comments. I had a chance to take a look at the original RFP and the revisions that you had provided and then subsequently circulated. And one suggestion was that I noticed that there was no assumptions section. Typically, assumptions adds structure and focus to the RFP, keeps everybody on board. For example, certain things could be added to the assumptions, like assuming that no student would transfer on the high school level from one school to another, or programs that are offered and the student experience would not change or be disrupted, and administrative changes would be done with a minimal of disruption and the maximum use of existing administrative infrastructure and resources. So just a suggestion there. I was a little puzzled by the reason why you had 5 funding options. I understand that we wanted to see what the analysis was with a per pupil, and obviously in this scenario, in a deregionalization scenario, how that would compare to an assessed value. But I just couldn't understand why you had a kind of a striated 5 different options that would increase the scope and complexity of the analysis and not provide any measurable benefit there. My last comment was that it seemed that the qualifications for the bidders seemed a bit too stringent, considering that there's a very limited precedent for deregionalization efforts in the state of New Jersey. So I suggest that maybe that might be relaxed to allow more bidders to make it more competitive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. Phillips, 310 Mendham Road West, Mendham, New Jersey. I'd like to say that I am a member of the Jamie Button fan club. I've seen him operate at the school board over these last number of years, and I think we're so fortunate to have such a wonderful advocate for the township. How important is his position? I mean, we only have 1 member on the school board, and there's 9 members there. I've seen him stand up against Washington Valley over and over again, maybe fighting against 8-1, maybe 7-2 at different times. I think we really have an expert, I mean, as far as his understanding of what's going on in the school. Having put 6 children through Mendham High School, going to Harvard, to Duke, I mean, he is really an authority. I would like to see his input on most things. I understand your reservations about going back to the borough now, and I think you have a point there. I mean, we're going to go back to them after we submitted stuff. I think that's a problem. I'm not sure why that developed in the first place. I think we're all driving in the same direction. I appreciate all your input. I think Mr. Tolley and certainly Mrs. Thomas has been working on this for years with very frustrating results. Like I said, myself having 4 children in the school system, I'm pretty aware of some of the issues that are going on. From my understanding, we're paying $20,000 per student. Washington Township is paying $10,000 per student. To add to that, I think Mr. Button came to the fact that not only that, we're spending $1,200 more per student at Central than on the students at Mendham High School, which is just adding salt to the wounds. I mean, it's so absurd that this has gone on for years and years. I understand Mr. Button's frustrations. And I've seen him fight on the school board. I have seen other school board members leave, and I've seen Mr. Button stay. And I'll give you a prediction. I think there's 2 fronts we're fighting on, deregionalization and the school board elections. I think if we have a couple of stronger members on the school board, we have a good opportunity to change some of the funding. And that's just not a weak issue, and it may be a more probable thing. If we have 5 members voting the same way on the school board, we can make a lot of avenues, and I hope that Mr. Kavanagh gets elected on the school board, and maybe another member from Mendham Borough, because I think over the period of time, some of those members voted with Washington Valley, and I think it was just a matter of survival. But at this point, where we have a majority on the school board, I think we can make some serious inroads. Like I said, I understand your reservations about going back to the borough, and I think you have a point there. At the same time, I think we have an expert, Jamie Button, that, I would consult with him as our representative on the board, because I think he was elected by the township people to make a change in this inequitable situation. I know for a couple of years ago they cut back on some of the funding. The busing issue was touched. It touched hundreds of students and families in Mendham Township. It touched a handful of people in Washington Valley. Our school is controlled by people who live 10 miles away from us in Washington Valley. And I think our school will come back. I think we will get Mendham back, bring Mendham High School back to Mendham. I think that's going to be the final outcome. I know it's frustrating. I appreciate your guys' hard work. I know of you. I know Sam has worked on this for years, and it's been very difficult. Mrs. Thomas, and I know Mr. Stobel is acting on, Mr. Bauman too. I think we're going in the same direction. I would like to see us work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to address the committee at this point?
Brian Kavanagh again, 610 Charlene. I'll be brief. I have had some conversations with the Borough Council. They approved the version of the RFP that was sent over here. I think they'd be amenable to revising it back to that version, or that version amended by some of the ministerial changes that have been recommended. So I don't think you need to worry about. At least my understanding is that they would be amenable to that. There's concern in that slowing down the process. So I would ask the Township Committee, because frankly it's in their interest as well, particularly the funding formula, if it were focusing only on the per pupil alternative. And it's in everyone's interest to get this done in keeping it as free of needless obstacles as possible. So I would, again, I am the fan club, having witnessed his hard advocacy over the past year. So those are my final comments. I would please urge the committee to reconsider going back, comments in accordance with Mr. Button's email to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other members wish to address the Township Committee at this point? Seeing none, we'll close this portion of the agenda, and we'll move on to announcements. Does anybody have